Techlandia is recorded at the Central Office on the East Side in Portland. Central Office is a one-stop for all your office or meeting needs. Check them out at centraloffice.com.
Welcome to Techlandia, Tao's regular podcast series. I'm Skip Newberry, President and CEO of Tao. And with us is our guest today. We're excited to have Bonnie Crawford, who's the COO at Texada Software. Bonnie, thanks for being here.
Hey, Skip. So great to be here. Thank you for having me.
Well, as most of our listeners know, I like to start with some context and give folks a chance to kind of get to know you a little bit. And you have a really interesting career trajectory. Would love if you could maybe take a couple minutes just to start us off and kind of walk us through what that trajectory looks like. Where'd you get started? And then take us right up to the current day.
Sure, that would be great. It has been quite a journey. So I landed in Portland as a student at Lewis and Clark College up on Palatine Hill, majored in political science, and thought for sure I was going to become an attorney. And after college, I fell in love with technology, and I started my technology journey as the executive assistant to the CEO of a tech company in the early 2000s, working with NASA and other large aerospace companies. And from there, really started to look for ways to expand beyond that assistant capacity. And I had an opportunity to work in product with GE and spent many years, really diving into the process side of things as it related to technology and then spent a number of years really building into the professional services and customer realm. First at a startup, which was based here in Portland, that was called Chalkstone, that eventually became a part of Heartland Payment Systems. And then at a very well-known Portland organization, Viewpoint Construction Software, where I built and led their services organization. And it's where I got a chance to meet Skip and the Tao team for the first time as I embarked on really how to bring customers and projects and professional services into the technology realm. After an incredible almost a decade with Viewpoint, which landed me in Australia as part of a integration team and leading a post-acquisition integration, I took kind of a strange to some career pivot and went to another Portland tech company, Jive Software, and spent a year in sales. At that point, technology generalist, I really felt like it was important to spend time understanding the go-to-market journey and how customers bought technology. Because to me, as I was thinking about the longer-term career aspirations, it felt important to have that experience in my trivial pursuit pie, if you will. And then I had a chance to step into my first executive role, leading the customer organization for another Portland tech company, which was used to be Globe Sherpa, became Movable. And as part of the Daimler Mobility family, spent a number of years there, and then went on to a large technology organization that runs transit globally around the world during COVID as their general manager for their SaaS technology company. And then most recently, these last couple of years, the Viewpoint gang reunited at Texada Software, which is a heavy equipment SaaS company that has many of the management team based here in Portland. And our company is co-located in Portland and Toronto, Canada. And I started there as the chief customer officer, and then very recently in May became the chief operating officer for the organization. So from mailroom to boardroom, as I like to say, it's been quite a journey, and I feel very lucky to have had all of the different experiences that I've had thus far.
That's great. Well, talking to people who are not from the tech world, oftentimes when I mention something like customer success, customer experience, they're kind of looking at me like with a blank stare, like, what are you talking about? And how is that different from, say, the sales motion or a traditional marketing function or customer service. And I was at an event a number of years ago with a bunch of marketing people, and someone who was speaking at the event said, we're going to talk a little bit about customer success here. And the marketing people kind of groaned, and they were like, people have been telling us that if we were doing our jobs correctly, that customer success never would have been created as a function in the first place.
My
And
goodness.
so I'm wondering, with all of this kind of like different perceptions of what customer success, customer experience is, what does it mean to you and in your professional sort of history, and where do you see things like what do you want people to know about that role?
That's such a great question. I think I like to first step back and remember that we are all customers in our daily journey, whether it's consuming that fantastic espresso that we like to share when we meet up at Good Coffee, or whether it's, consuming a service that we subscribe to, a software package. And so when you think about customer experience, the customer's experience needs to be at the center of everything you do as an organization. And so, yes, marketing has a very important role to play in customer experience, as does sales, as does engineering and product and finance. Because if get the wrong invoice, is your customer experience better or worse as a consumer of whatever product or service you're thinking about? And so, as I've looked at customer success and customer experience, I want to empower organizations to put the customer at the center of everything that they do. And for us at Texada, we call that customer awesomeness. And it is something that we are thinking about every day in every interaction across our organization, because we really do want to make sure that we're always thinking about how our customers are engaging with us and what that experience feels like.
So in many respects, I would imagine it has a lot to do too with helping to define a company's culture. What are some ways in which like internal communications are such an important part of your day to day and the work that you and your team does, or at least did before you became COO and you were more focused on customer experience as the customer experience officer?
It's really about weaving in every interaction that you have and creating that closed loop. And communication, whether you're using Slack or Teams or some kind of chat function, whether you're using a CRM, whether you're using that and all of the above, and now you're leveraging generative AI into the mix. So how is, Gemini or one of the Claudes, like really piecing together all of those communications. Because ultimately, the more insight you have about a customer, the better you're going to be able to create the experience that they have with you and your company. And for us, what that looks like is capturing the insights and the intent from a support ticket, for example, or a sales conversation that one of our customer success agents would be having, and weaving that into what's the next signal that we need to be sharing with them. What are they considering? What's the problem that they're experiencing in their business? Maybe not anything to do with Texada, but that as thought leaders, we can come alongside them and make their experience with their own customers that much better.
Mhm. And now you in your experience started I mean, you had work in sales, you spent time in product. In many respects, you have to understand and appreciate a lot of different functions within a company in order to be able to help kind of bridge between what the customer wants and needs and what you're able to deliver on the other hand, internally. And I'm wondering, as someone who's hiring for people who have that kind of customer centric view, what do you recommend to people who are starting to build their careers in technology? Do you recommend a particular role or function for them to start in if they want to eventually accumulate the same types of experiences and skills that you did? What does
You
that look
know,
like?
That is a great question. And I will tell you that some of the best hires that I have ever made have actually come out of the retail industry, the restaurant industry, and customer service in general, whether it's in a tech company or not. And that's partly because it's very difficult to teach the underlying qualities and experiences that are customer centric and that are putting the customer first. If you're staffing a restaurant or a retail experience, if you're working a call center at a tech company, you are interacting with customers every day. And if you have a great approach and manner and a high, what we call say do, so that follow through, I'm telling you I'm going to do something and then I come around and I actually get it done. Those are things that are very difficult to teach someone. And so if you bring that experience to a tech organization, we can teach you how to run a project or create customer success plays that you'll run in your portfolio of customers. It's very difficult to teach someone to put the customer first and to listen and value the customer's experience.
So you've done a lot of mentoring as well, and you currently serve on Oregon Business Academy (OBA's) board, and this is a summer camp essentially experience for high school kids who want to gain exposure to business fundamentals. And I was wondering, if you could tell us a little bit about what drew you to OBA, and also maybe if there are certain things that you've learned from that experience or that you incorporate similarly in how you think about professional development among your team, among your company.
I love this question because if I wasn't a software leader, I think I would be a career coach or counselor or a professional mentor, I guess. I am so passionate about the value of mentoring, and Oregon Business Academy allows me to spend time really, pouring that into the next generation of leaders at the high school level. It's an opportunity for us to meet students where they are as they're just learning about business and start to ground them in some of the basics, how to interview, how to, do an introduction, sit at a business dinner and engage in, conversation, how to present a product or, learn what is a financial statement. Some of these things that for many of us who didn't grow up in and around business might be foreign to them. And for me, I've had the benefit over the years of incredible mentors who opened doors for me before I even knew that there was a door to be opened, or who provided constructive feedback when I was perhaps going off track. We all have those moments where you have some, rough edges that may need to be smoothed out. And for a lot of, people that are on their career journey, they might not have anyone, whether it's in your organization or outside of your organization, that's really committed to your ongoing success and who are willing to have those constructive conversations around, like, hey, this is something you're doing really well. And this is something that, you're leaving behind, or if you just did it a little bit differently, might unlock that next opportunity. And I think I look at my teams that I've led for the last 15 years that I've been in leadership roles, it looks like having people's back and understanding with them what their goals are, and then giving feedback and also giving an environment which these days I feel like we can all as business leaders do better, where people can fail and that's okay because we are going to learn quickly from our mistakes. We're going to continue to improve. One of our values at Texada is progress, not perfection. And it really is about continuous improvement, continuing on that learning journey that allows everyone to recognize that it's okay to occasionally make a mistake as long as we are learning from it and we're getting better. And we know that we're in an environment where we're effectively going to grab a loose end or a ball that might be about to drop with another team member, and then go and take that, catch it, and make sure that we get everything dialed in.
I love that progress, not perfection mantra. And, I see it too, just as a parent with kids who are often trying to hold themselves to unrealistic standards, right? That they set for themselves or that they see out there in society. And the reality is that if you're not willing to take risks and not willing to, make yourself uncomfortable, you're not gonna fail. And if you don't fail, you're not gonna learn and grow, right? I mean, it's like if you're just doing the same thing you're comfortable doing day in and day out, that doesn't seem like much of an evolution, right? So yeah, it's an interesting space right now because there's so much dynamism and so much uncertainty, both macro in a macro sense, but also at companies right now. And being able to provide that element of a sense of safety, like, hey, we've got you. If you're willing to try and be transparent about, hey, I tried this and failed, but here's how I'm going to course correct or how I'm going to learn from it. Awesome. Keep doing that. Right. I feel like few organizations have really embraced that. Do you see the same thing in what you're seeing out there? Is Texada kind of an anomaly?
Well, I don't like to think that we're not an anomaly, but I do want to pull on that thread for a moment, because that pushing yourself outside of your comfort zone is, as I do the mock interview process with the OBA students, it's the number one thing that I talk to them about as they're
Mhm.
thinking about business. And I do this within our organization as well. If you are putting yourself into a place where you're out of your comfort zone, where you're trying something new, you know, it takes time to achieve that progress. It takes time to try something and go, yep, that wasn't a success. We're going to try again. We're going to try a different route. And if you think about even looking at it from a career perspective, part of I really believe how I transitioned from, place to place in a really meaningful way is because I said yes to things that were uncomfortable or that were challenging, where I was going to have to do something that I had never done before, or a role or an activity. And I looked at it early days as like, what's the worst that can happen? If everybody else is saying no because this project or this initiative is potentially destined to fail, and so people already believe it's going to be hard or messy or difficult, let's let's say yes, because if it does fail, you learned from it, you got experience, you grew from it. But if it doesn't fail and you manage to help make it a success, that is leveling you up in a way that you're not only learning from it, but you're also leaning in and taking on something that really challenged you. And now you've really grown from that experience. And I think for Texada, especially as we view it through the prism of AI these days, we have been on an AI journey that really started at the end of 2023, beginning of 24, where we started introducing it into our teams from a company-wide productivity. Let's experiment. Let's see what this was going to look like. How do we use it? Should we use Gemini? Should we use, Chat GPT at the time? What about, when does Claude enter the mix? And as we incrementally engaged with it, we got to a point where, yes, as many companies we were seeing, 10% gain, 20% gain, 30% gain. And earlier this year, we did an entire transformation of our engineering organization around really that human in the middle AI experience, where we looked at, what if we tried a bunch of experiments and we built these pods that allowed us to generate code in a trust oriented environment, because trust is a part of the AI journey that many companies haven't necessarily considered. How do we trust that this code is correct? How do we trust that it meets the requirements that we've set out. And so creating a trust practice is something that we took on board to ensure that we've been able to start to undergo this transformation that's accelerated productivity in the 100 and 200%. And that is transformational. And it's because our engineering and products and really our whole R&D organization said we have to be willing to experiment and to think entirely differently about how we utilize these tools to unlock that next level of capability that I think for a lot of organizations, they're fearful of, like, people are going to be worried, like, what about my job? What is technology going to replace me? And this is an opportunity to look at, like, look at all the new ways that your lived experience and career experience is actually contributing to this transformation rather than is it taking away from it?
Yep. So true. I mean, a lot of those themes that you just highlighted in terms of the adoption of AI are things we're starting to hear from more and more companies we work with around either they didn't start there, but ended up there eventually through trial and error and a lot of mistakes. But this kind of people, process, and tech systems approach
Mhm.
to AI, change management essentially in a big way. It's an all of the things, not just one. You can't just say we're going to flip this new solution on and it's going to be good to go and people will be ready to know what to do. Nope. Um,
Yeah.
and also, I'm wondering your thoughts on kind of this kind of SaaS apocalypse worry that hit the markets back in, when was it, January or so this year, and then didn't quite come to be. So, are you seeing that Texada is essentially just integrating AI in a way that's keeping up with what the markets expect of companies when it comes to change with respect to AI? Or are you saying that, well, actually, I think what the markets thought they saw back in January didn't come to be because they were wrong. The analysts were wrong, and SaaS is not going away overnight, but there is this evolution afoot. And we as a company are, you know, trying to figure out what that looks like, but it's not going to be at the snap of one's fingers. I mean, what are you seeing in terms of making sense of all of that?
Yeah, I mean, it's a really great question, and it is top of mind for all of us every day as we think about the SaaS landscape. So let me start with the first part of the question. Do I think that the SaaS apocalypse is coming to pass? No, I don't think that, people are going to replace SaaS software with a snap of a finger. I think that part of what really guards against that is that, there's lots of capability out there. You can go vibe code an app and a website in, a couple hours, a couple days, a couple weeks. And then what is the long-term strategy for those, quickly stood up pieces of code that, again, I'm going to go back to, that guards against the ever evolving, cyber security landscape that's out there, that ensures that you have trust in your systems, that brings in the people side of software. Software is only one part of the puzzle. Your team's experience and the connection that they're creating with their customers, with their users, is an invaluable piece of the puzzle that vibe coded app isn't going to be replacing anytime soon. And so I think if you take a step back, and this has certainly been our approach, we've looked at the whole picture. And we are looking at, how do we leverage AI to continue to transform our own products and services and our own team's use of this new capability? But at the same time, when you are deploying any kind of SaaS system, change management within your own organization is an extremely important part of our customer's journey. And so making sure that we are creating that connection with the customers, getting closer to them driving the value creation that's coming from the products and services that we provide is, I think, one of the things that the SaaS companies that are looking out long term are seeing as a good guard against any kind of future air quoted SaaS apocalypse that might come.
Well, thank you for that insight. It's definitely something that, as I've talked to more folks within our network, there's a wide variety of different thoughts and opinions, and I
I'm sure.
personally like your take. um, as we kind of wrap up our time together today, I was wondering, I've always appreciated your insights more broadly on things, and I'm always intrigued to hear what you're listening to or reading. Anything recently that you might want to share with our listeners?
Yeah, actually, I have two really interesting reads that I've got going on right now. So, as you know, I work East Coast hours, but from our beautiful city of Portland. And so I've been reading this book by Robin Sharma, The 5 a.m. Club, which is really about leveraging these early morning hours and how, especially for, senior leaders who need to show up grounded and refreshed and really kind of holistically think about your, mind, body, and energy. That's one that I have been really enjoying this summer. And then the other, so much of what we do in the customer realm is around negotiation, and it's that give and take with customers and finding the balance. And I've been reading, I just finished the Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss, who is a FBI negotiator. And it's a fascinating book. If you negotiate anything in your life, whether you're a parent and you're negotiating with your kids, whether you're a business leader, whether you're just looking to, buy a new product or service, I would recommend it as a great read and one that I think you'll get some key learnings from.
Love it. Thank you for those. Definitely added them to my reading list. Well, Bonnie, just wanted to say thank you for taking some time out of your busy schedule to spend it with us today. Always appreciate talking with you. Hopefully, our listeners did as well.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure, and I look forward to seeing you around Portland soon.
Sounds good. Thanks, Bonnie.
Thanks for tuning in to Techlandia. If you enjoyed today's conversation, be sure to subscribe, share it with your network, and leave us a review. It really helps grow the show. Techlandia is about connecting you to the people, ideas, and innovation shaping our region's tech community. If you want to support the podcast and its mission, check out the links in the show notes. Until next time, stay curious, stay connected, and keep building what's next.